Welcome to Age Reversing Health, where we discuss ways to help you go far beyond just surviving this life, with practical and proven solutions to literally turning the clock back on aging so you can live your best life. Live younger for longer. Now, here's your hosts, Carl Krebs and Judy Friesen.
Well, welcome back. My name is Carl Krebs. I'm the host of Things That Matter. And in our second segment, Age Reversing Health, we're going to be talking about the effect of Robert F. Kennedy Jr., who is taking a very, very sizable role in the new Trump administration as he promises to revamp the FDA, which is, of course, the Federal Drug Administration in the United States. But the question we have is, how is this going to affect us here in Canada with the amount of trade that we have ongoing with the United States? And Judy Friesen is just joining us right now. She is my co-host on this segment. Judy is a 38-year health coach and a consultant, and I go to her when I have questions about health. So Judy, if you can hear us, welcome to the show.
Hi there, Carl. Good to be with you.
Well, you know, we gave you a few weeks off. I mean, you've been globetrotting. Let's just revise. Let's just do a quick review. There was Japan with the family, and then there was back to Canada, and then there was a LifeWave convention in Dallas, which I saw you at, and then of course there was a trip that you'd earned through LifeWave to go to Punta Cana. Have I got everything, or did I miss something? Oh no, then there are other trips for board memberships.
Right. I'm on the board of an international charity, and so I just came back from being in Chicago for 4 days and returned just this last Sunday.
Wow, that is a busy schedule, my dear, no doubt.
Yeah. But I'm doing good and ready to hit the road running and get a lot of good stuff done.
Well, you know, and I'm going to start with this video. I think it does quite a good job of encapsulating what Robert F. Kennedy Jr., of course, he's the son of Robert F. Kennedy, who we know tragically was shot. And he's also the nephew of the other Kennedys that we know so well. So he plays prominently in politics. He is an environmental lawyer by trade. He is, and this one is interesting, he is against vaccinations. He is anti-vax as it comes, and he has spoken out very clearly about how he feels about the vaccinations. And if you actually Google it, Wikipedia will list him as a conspiracy theorist. We've got a very interesting man taking on a very prominent position with the Trump administration come January 20th. And I believe it was in Donald Trump's acceptance speech that, or perhaps just an interview they did, he said, I told Robert, you can have this and that, just leave the oil to me. Everything else he has carte blanche access to. So, you know, when we talk about the Federal Drug Administration, the FDA as we call it, you know, I thought it was actually bigger than it is, but it really is a medium-sized agency within the United States. But it is very powerful, Judy. We know that firsthand because they have the ability to say what can hit the market and then what you can say about that. Talk a little bit about that, because we've both been in that position, you know, subject to what the FDA will allow companies to say.
Yeah. Pardon me. Yes, absolutely. The FDA is the watchdog. They see themselves as protecting the public. So they review every new drug, every new vitamin, every new herb, every new medical device that comes to market. And they have the power to shut down a company as large as LifeWave if they say and they deem that they don't think that our product is safe or efficacious, or if they think that we are claiming things that we shouldn't be claiming. They have huge, huge power. It's interesting, though, Carl, that they spend far more time scrutinizing natural health products than they do very toxic drugs that come to market. And you know what, Carl? It's all about the money.
I wanted to bring that up, but you beat me to it because, you know, and it is about the money. And I believe in this video, we're going to hear some of what RFK has to say about the influence of the pharmaceutical giants in the FDA. But it is shocking to see that they're going after natural health products, which LifeWave is just one of many. But we were restricted for a better part of a year for most of our products, which never had any challenges in the courts. There were never any complaints. There was never any kind of issues with somebody, suffering from using the product. But we're not the only one. We're not the only company. And many other companies, when they came under the scrutiny, and this is Health Canada now, which works, in conjunction with the FDA. I don't want to mix my metaphors here, but Health Canada, FDA, similar kind of function in that they have the ability to shut you down and just hold you in a holding pattern for as long as it takes to either for you to acquiesce, and in this case, LifeWave, it has had their druthers with the FDA and with Health Canada, but they've battled back, and I'm excited to see this man take the helm and do something about something that's long overdue.
Absolutely, yeah. And what Health Canada did was simply ask us for a name change. I mean, for heaven's sakes, it wasn't reformulating the patches or rechanging the product or anything. And we had all the studies that they accepted that were still good, still showed that they do what they do, that we're not claiming cures, and yet they asked us to change the name. And so it can be as small as just, changing a name on a product that can hold you up for over a year. But yes, I think that that we have a lot more freedoms coming, and there'll be more opportunities for Canadians to get their hands on certain products that are natural. Like, for example, you can't even buy more than 1,000 international units of vitamin D in Canada, Carl. You can't. And yet, my own osteoporosis doctor said, Judy, when you're living north of the 61st parallel or whatever that's called, the 40, what is it called when we live north?
49th.
49th parallel, sorry. When you live that far north, you're not getting the right refraction of the sun, and therefore you're not able to make vitamin D. Even if you're out naked all summer, you're not able to make enough vitamin D. Most of us cover ourselves up most of the summer, maybe short sleeves, but you need far more skin. And anyway, my point is that the FDA or the Health Canada has restricted us from getting what my own doctor told me I needed to take, which is 5,000 to 10,000 IUs of vitamin D. Well, guess what? I got to take 10 of those stupid little suckers to get what I need for my dose per day, because for some silly reason, they deem that Canada can't have more than 1,000. But you go down to the States and you can get 5,000 and 10,000 IUs of vitamin D in 1 or 2 little capsules. So what is going on? I believe that Canada is going to help us huge.
Actually, I hope so too. Let's go to this video, which I have already mentioned.
And ending the chronic disease epidemic. And don't you want a president that's going to make America healthy again?
Before his announcement, I spoke with Kennedy about this very topic and a potential position in the Trump White House. Take a look. I thought it'd be great to just kind of look at some of these items, because parents are encountering these food items in grocery stores everywhere. Maybe we could just start right here with seed oils. We're hearing a lot about seed oils. Why should people be worried about these kind of products?
Seed oils are one of the most unhealthy ingredients that we have in foods. And seed oils, the reason they're in the foods is because they're heavily subsidized. They're very, very cheap, but they are associated with all kinds of very, very serious illnesses, including body-wide inflammation.
Right.
Which affects all of our health. It's one of the worst things you can eat, and it's almost impossible to avoid. If you eat any processed food, you're going to be eating seed oil.
Right, and it's interesting, the government subsidizes it. Why would the government want to subsidize something that's going to make people sick? And then in the end, we all end up paying for that in terms of healthcare costs, which are skyrocketing.
Yeah, because that is a direct result of corruption. About 75% of FDA's budget comes from regulated industry, and that means food processors and pharmaceutical industry. All of them profit from a sick population.
You know, a big item that, and by the way, it's getting very expensive, are cereals. Why is the food coloring in particular bad?
Food coloring, you see your yellow food coloring, that is a petroleum product. It's associated with really, with depression. It's associated with autoimmune injuries and ADHD.
Yeah.
And red dye also is very bad. In Europe, the same companies are producing the same products, but they're using natural coloring. But here they can get away with it. We have about almost 1,000 chemicals that are in our food that are either outright banned in Europe or actively discouraged. So you wouldn't be able to buy this kind of stuff in Europe. You ask about why it's so cheap, why it's so ubiquitous. It's because we subsidize the worst foods. We subsidize it with about 70% of our food stamp program is to processed foods, which are all poison.
Right. One of the things that's interesting is you'll see on labels natural flavors, which is this catch-all phrase that I guess was lobbied for, but the ingredients in natural flavors are not really natural.
No. In our country, natural flavors are chemical products. So you can't trust what's on the ingredient label, and the reason for that, again, is government corruption. It's that the agency, the USDA, the FDA, have been captured by the industries they're supposed to regulate, and they all have an interest in subsidies and then in mass poisoning the American public.
Yeah, I want to talk about pesticides, and then let's talk about the policy. So let's talk about the pesticides and the things that worry you about. I mean, this looks like fresh food, right? What should I be worried about here?
Yeah, I mean, the irony is, like, for example, my wife loves kale, and she had the impression that kale is actually good for you. If it's organic, it's very good for you. But most kale and strawberries, for example, grapes, are contaminated with pesticides. And particularly the Environmental Working Group has found what they call the dirty dozen, some of the worst pesticides on these products. So, I look at a strawberry and I think, oh, this is a healthy food.
Right.
But in most cases, unless it's organic, certified organic, you are getting something that's actually hurting you.
What can be done at a government level to stop this and make people get healthy?
Yeah, as president, I'll issue an executive order on day one that anybody who is recommending food products in USDA or FDA at any of those committees, if you are going to be on those committees, you have to have no conflict of interest. We spend 5 times our military budget on chronic disease.
Yeah.
And it's made us the sickest population in the world. And if you wonder why we're the sickest people in the world, why do we have these epidemics of ADHD and depression and all these kind of psychiatric illnesses that have been linked by the science to these kind of foods, to the ingredients in these foods, and why do we have these neurological disorders, all this epidemic of autoimmune disease?
So many of these products are geared towards children, which I think is what's really tragic about it. It's sort of like you're putting them at a very early age on this pathway to chronic disease, and then at the end of that is pharma to sort of cure whatever the food did to you.
The advisors who actually choose the nutrition guidelines are almost all of corrupted. They're conflicted.
Are you willing to take on a position like this in the Trump administration as health czar?
Well, one way or the other, I'm going to be fighting to get this stuff out of our foods. I mean, we're poisoning. We have a generation of kids that are swimming around in a toxic soup right now. And we need to, we're betraying them. We're supposed to be taking care of our kids, and we're letting these industries corrupt our agencies and mass poison them. And, nobody in the world has a chronic disease epidemic of the kind that we have in this country.
Yeah, it's true. I think it's a sleeper issue of this election. So I really appreciate you coming on, explaining this, breaking it down, and laying out your policies.
Rachel, thanks for having me, and thanks for paying attention to this.
All right. Well, that was, as I said, that is the new health czar, and that was actually filmed in August when RFK was still on the ballot in those different states. But it was almost a casting forward because now he has that authority. Judy, I want to ask you a question here because it struck me as I was listening to it again. If America is going to impose such strict guidelines on the food and the quality of the food and deal with those issues that he mentions, I would assume then that Canadian producers of that same food will not be able to ship that food into America. So now we have the connector between what the FDA will do and what will happen in Canada. Is that not accurate?
Yeah, I think that's going to be accurate. I mean, time will tell, right? We're going to find out what's going to happen and how it's going to affect our Canadian manufacturers, our producers, the people who are putting all kinds of stuff even into our foods here in Canada. So I'm hoping and praying that what this man what Kennedy is hoping to do in the US is going to spill over into Canada and our regulations here as well.
Well, absolutely, because you and I have talked in previous programs the obesity problem. I could go to another video here of Dr. Cassie Means talking about the obesity and all the things that stood out years ago that are now commonplace. You see obese children everywhere. This has a lot to do with the label. I think one of the most shocking things he said there is you can't trust the label.
Yeah,
most of us are now reading labels when we go to the supermarket, including me.
Exactly. Like I read labels a lot because I am lactose intolerant. And so I actually need to find out if there's any kind of dairy, whey, or other types of cow products. But the labels are very, very difficult to understand. Some people who have a very high issue with any kind of monosodium glutamate, MSG, we often know that that's often found in Chinese food, but guess what? They changed the name. So now if you look in the label and you don't see any MSG, you think you're safe. You're not. They actually have changed the name to different. They're doing juggling acts with the chemical.
It's like a shell game. It's like a shell game.
It's a shell game. And so you're right. The connection between what was just talked about, which is all of these toxins and chemicals in our foods, they actually, you're very right, Carl, to bring up the topic of obesity. And people might think, well, wait a minute, well, why are you talking about obesity? Well, it's not just about sugar and fat in a lot of our products, but did you know that when you take in a lot of these chemicals year after year after year after year, they actually interfere with your endocrine system. And the endocrine system is also affected and affects how you metabolize your foods. And so you wonder if you're dieting, if you're trying to be careful, if you've got a toxic load in your body is not functioning right. And it's actually not willing to drop the fat because guess what? Fat is like an insurance package to the body. The way the human being was made is to keep fat in case there's a famine, or in case you can't go and catch that bear or that elk to give you your winter's meat. But now in this day and age, we've got a ton of people, especially kids, that have got so many toxins in their bodies that even if they did stop eating Twinkies and McDonald's hamburgers, they're not going to drop the weight because their whole hormone system is all messed up.
Okay, so we've stated the problem. You touched on one right there, hormones. And let's get to a natural cure, because we know that if they create the problem, they're going to give you the solution. So we have pharmaceutical influence into our food system, into every facet of it. And he used some strong language there to accuse them of what they're doing.
Yeah.
So now they create the problem. And guess what? Here's a pill to deal with that problem and another pill to deal with the problem that the other pill, like this is a conveyor belt that never ends. How do we do it naturally? Tell us about the natural solutions that you recommend to your clients, because we got to give people natural as much as we can.
We do, and we can't sit around waiting for government to fix all these problems. I mean, bless his heart, Kennedy is going to try to fix it. But you know what? All these bills pass and all these regulations, it's going to take time before it trickles down to the average Joe like you and me. And so what are we going to do about our health while we're waiting for the root of the problem to be solved, which is to stop these manufacturers from loading our foods with salt and sugar, which gets us addicted to it, and adding all these chemicals to make the matter worse. So one of the natural things to do first and foremost is to stop eating at fast foods and start to purchase in the grocery store from the outside of the aisles, not going on the inside, because the inside of your grocery store are where you've got a plethora of foods that are all a different combination of salt, sugar, and fat. And so we've got every kind of cracker and Twinkie and whatever else is available. But if you go to the outside perimeter where there's your fresh food, so to speak, you're a
Yeah,
little
you got
bit,
dairy and cheese and meat and produce. They're all on the outside.
vegetables.
I never dawned on me, but that is an
Yeah,
amazing
just
observation.
stay in the perimeter. But even as we've heard, even getting these vegetables, the next thing you do besides going perimeter grocery shopping and stopping to go to a lot of fast foods is understanding that you need to wash your vegetables in a very special way, because there's so many toxins on the surface. You're not going to get rid of it if it was growing with toxins. You're going to be consuming that food because it's in the flesh of the cucumber, it's in the flesh of the orange. But at least wash the outside of your vegetables, and you can make a simple solution of baking soda, vinegar, or hydrogen peroxide and water. And you can buy these fruit or vegetable cleaning sprays, but they're expensive and you don't need to do it. You can make your own. It's just a very small amount of hydrogen peroxide and water, and spray your vegetables or soak them in your sink in water, and it will get rid of a lot of the surface stuff. But the most important thing is you're not going to get rid of a lot of the toxins that are in the oats and in the fruits that we buy. So what do? You have to eat, and you have no idea. Even though I agree with Kennedy that buying organic would help you, but you know what, Carl? There is all kinds of stuff going on with the organic seal. People are buying off people to put the organic seal on stuff that's not organic, or the organic farmer is farming right beside the farmer that's spraying, and the wind carries it over. I mean, you can't win. So that's why I love doing what I'm doing as a health consultant and giving people real options to protect and help their bodies with this toxic load, because you just can't eat as well as you think you can, no matter how much you spend on organics. One of the things is to detoxify. And the other thing is that you and I both know that we have a very, very powerful detoxification method using phototherapy that helps people to start to detoxify some of these heavy metals and these other toxins out of their body.
Okay, so we're back on detoxing, which it seems to be, it's always present there, that it's coming in our air, our water, our food, and we've got to get those toxins out. So once we clean house, how do we prevent, because there's an addictive nature to some of this food. Like Americans and Canadians are addicted to sugar. How do we get rid of that addiction? We've got a few minutes left here, about 5 maybe, but I want to talk about how can we help people to break those addictions, because they are addictions.
So Carl, addictions is very difficult because there's a signal going to a part of the brain that keeps wanting you to stay addicted. It gives you these endorphins that makes you want to have the sugar and the salt, even if you're not even hungry anymore. And we all know that willpower does not really work for 95% of the population, because if it did, then people would stop smoking easily, or they'd stop drinking if they are overdoing it with alcohol. So when it comes to sugar and fat, Carl, just toughing it out and saying, I'm going to have the willpower, I'm going to do it, it's very, very difficult. So let's talk turkey here. Your willpower isn't going to keep you going for very long. Let's just be honest. It's very, very, very difficult. But I've come across a phototherapy patch from the company LifeWave that actually helps to send the signal, a healthy signal to your brain to turn off that desire to make you want to have the bad stuff. And when I use this patch, it's called SP6. And it's a special acupuncture point on the body. When I use that, Carl, I went grocery shopping when I had it on, and I would always be looking and staring at the chips or the chocolate bars, because that's my weakness. And I looked at them, and my brain had this light signal going to it. And I looked at the chocolate and the chips, and I actually picked it up because I was going to put it in my cart. I put it back because it seemed icky to me. And I thought, what's happened to me? It's because I had this light therapy patch on. It's simple. I put it on and it sends a light signal and it stops me from craving, whether it's smoking, or whether our listeners have a problem with alcohol or fat or sugar, whatever it is, it's going to reduce your appetite for whatever it is you're craving. It's amazing.
Well, that is amazing. And there are no side effects, because LifeWave has no side effects to any of their patches, correct? They're all natural in the way that they're stimulating the body, as you say, sending a better message to the brain. to break that compulsion to say, I want that, I need that. No, you don't. And suddenly when you start to break that communication that's happening, the temptation kind of naturally goes away.
It does. I am living proof. And I've worked with some of my clients who also have issues with indigestion or with our hormones, hot flashes, PMS. And it also seems to regulate that. Why? Because it's actually regulating through your hormone system. But it sends this wonderful, gentle light signal that seems to not only help to calm down your hormones, but also it helps you to stop having that craving. And it really works. I cannot say enough about using this patch for a couple months, and you'll see your weight drop, you'll see your cravings go down, and even your hormones might be more regulated and more brought to a homeostasis.
Yeah, I was going to say there's another aspect to this patch that I read, that it has a metering effect on the hormones, right? Kind of balancing them. We've got about a minute and a half left here, but I just want to give that over to you to summarize how people can break this habit, and the fact that we need the help of our American friends to hopefully influence the Canadians that are doing the same thing as the Americans. So in the final minute, give us your summary of how this is going to play out. Best guess.
Yeah, I really hope that things are going to really improve here in Canada. But until then, I think we have to take matters into our own hands, eat well, try to eat organic, try to do the perimeter of the grocery store. And if you're struggling with your own problem with will to stop yourself, it's a losing battle for many people. And I think that this technology that we've got using a light therapy patch is the answer to helping you to get a hold of your cravings and to actually start to help yourself.
Yeah, and you know what? We're offering hope here, because sometimes that's what people need, because without hope, it's very, very difficult to function and to overcome these battles that we all have. Well, Judy, as always, thank you for being here. I'll look forward to next week's episode with you on age reversing health. And this is about age reversing health, because if we start now, we can stop that aging process. Thank you so much, Judy, for being with us.
You're welcome. And if people want more information, Carl, maybe you can help them to find you or I through some kind of a website.
Yeah, absolutely. info@thingsthatmatter.ca, and we'll forward your question on to Judy. Thank you again, Judy.
You're welcome. Good night.
All right. Well, that ends our age reversing health. And we are now going to move into our second segment, which is caring for kids. And I just found out that my guest is unable to attend. But let's start the show, Brad, with caring for kids.